let's start with the big trade in which we heard that really rumbled everyone here in Northeast Florida, and I'm sure Central Florida as well. The addition of Desmond Bane to the ball club. There were many that felt that maybe the team gave up too much. You do have others who are of the contrarian opinion and feel like that was the right amount to give up for a player with Bane's caliber. So how did you feel about the acquisition?
Yeah, right. Like when you first see it, it's like, oh my goodness, that's two proven NBA players, right? And then 4 picks and then a swap as well. The sticker shock kind of jumps out at you. But the bottom line is between Cole and KCP, both those guys, certainly with Cole, who's been here since he was drafted, you tip your cap and you say thanks for the memories. Right. Desmond Bane is the perfect fit for this team where they are right now. We knew Jeff Weltman was going to be aggressive heading into the offseason, but you wanted a guy who could fit into the Magic's defense-first mentality and identity that Coach Mosley has been painstakingly building since arriving, and you got a guy there. Desmond Bane is a very good perimeter defender. He should slide in like a glove in that regard. Right. But he's one of the best shooters in the league, and he has been since entering the league. He turns 27 a little bit later this month. He's on a contract for 4 more years. Talking about a really good free throw shooter. You're talking about a really good catch and shoot shooter, a really good off-the-bounce shooter, a career 41% three-point shooter. Yeah. He's very efficient. And then even I think we've seen over the last 2 years when John Morant's been out due to suspension or injuries, he can put the ball in his hands and he can play make as well. So should be a perfect fit. Yes, you're right. You gave up a whole bunch, but the thinking is, the 2028 and 2030 unprotected firsts, ideally, if all goes according to plan, those are late first-round picks anyways. And so it's going to be difficult, I think, to get all of those guys room on the roster and room on the floor for sure. So pushing your chips in, and we'll see how it works.
Now, you brought up Cole Anthony at the top, and I know he's been here since the beginning of his playing career, now moving on to Memphis, but you were able to cover him during his time in Central Florida. Just how fun of a guy was Cole Anthony?
I mean, that's, I think Coach Mosley called him the life of the party this year. Yeah. And, not only that, like that stuff has a lot of value within the locker room if you're a good player. And Cole Anthony was a good player and still is. At just 25 years old, I think he's still just scratching the surface of how effective and what exactly his role will be on a good team, but how effective he can be. I think a lot of Cole's, the early part of his career, especially because he was on a Magic team that wasn't winning a lot of games, was he was getting a big slice of the pie offensively. He was able to be inefficient because it really didn't matter at that point. Right. It was kind of just getting a whole bunch of offensive reps and trying to trim away some of the bad, get the turnovers down. His second season, he averaged over 2.5 turnovers. Right. He has an average more than 1.6 since then. Get the percentages up as far as the shooting goes. And it never quite clicked to the point that I think he would have wanted it to. But I think it's a really good opportunity for him in Memphis. And I think at this point, when you kind of look at what the rest of the roster looks like, guys like Anthony Black and Jett Howard, who are, it's going to be a pretty big year for those guys trying to prove where they sort of stand as far as the future goes. I think it made sense for Cole to move on, and I do think he'll be a really good fit there in Memphis backing up Ja.
Jake Chapman, our guest, joining us here on Open Gym, the radio play-by-play voice for your Orlando Magic. What other moves, in your opinion, do you feel the Magic need to make? Do you feel Jeff Weltman is still going to continuously be aggressive during this offseason? How does that front office and how does that group look at this roster currently and what they need to add?
Well, I think that was a big one, obviously, right? Like you needed to fix the shooting within the starting lineup and certainly within the top 8, whoever your playoff rotation is going to look like. And so I think you assume that if you're healthy, you're talking about, a backcourt that looks like it could be one of the best two-way backcourts in the NBA. Right. You're hoping for another year of development as far as your big two going, Paolo and Franz, and hoping they're able to be healthy all of next season and efficient as well. And then you still have some pretty good depth. You've got a couple options, obviously, at the 4 and 5. As of right now, I wouldn't expect another big trade or necessarily even a big free agent move. I think you're talking about more tweaks moving forward. But I wouldn't doubt if you look to perhaps upgrade one of those spots we were talking about, one of the kind of depth spots. or you kind of keep your chips close, whichever ones you do still have remaining, and you see what it looks like next year, and maybe you're a little bit more active in February at the trade deadline.
Now, the Orlando Magic, on top of the fact that they acquired Desmond Bane, I mean, just a couple of days before that, they rebranded, and I made sure to reach out to you and give you my thoughts on the rebrand. I thought it was absolutely tremendous. What did you make of the freshness of the ball club from a rebranding standpoint now that they've officially unveiled the jerseys, the new logo? Just what did you think about it?
Yeah, it's fresh, but it still managed to honor all of the stuff that basically every Magic fan tells you that they wanted involved, right? Like that first ball logo with the stars, and then you got the reference with the alternate jersey to those old warm-ups, the Shaq and Penny era that everybody loved, and you got the pinstripes. And I think the pinstripes is obviously what everybody was clamoring for. I thought they did a phenomenal job. I also know how much went into it. There's a couple of unique things. I mean, first of all, there have been murmurs and whispers, and we've been doing surveys as internal employees and all of this stuff going back 4 years now. So they did their homework, and they exhausted just about every different avenue of input and creative that they could find. But ultimately, they made kind of an internal task force of people like Tony Wen, who's one of our photographers, but who's also a really good young creative and graphic designer, put a lot into it. And so you end up with this really fresh look that I think, it definitely honors the nostalgia of the 90s Magic, which is, I mean, we remember, or anybody who's old enough does, they were the coolest team in sports in the 90s, right? It was Shaq and Penny.
Right.
And so, but it's not just, first of all, there's a lot of legal and licensing stuff that goes into it. You can't just trot out the pinstripes from the 90s and say, okay, this is going to be our jersey moving forward. So they were able to kind of, I think, combine all of those elements to make something fresh, but that's something that still reminds you and brings you back to the nostalgia of those old jerseys.
Final couple of moments with Jake Chapman, the radio play-by-play voice for the Orlando Magic, joining us on 1010XL and 92.5 FM on our text line. The 309 says, I'm not as concerned about point guard as I am. I discussed it before having you on, and he says he would like a slick shooter off of the bench. He wants a guy such as what Peyton Pritchard is to the Boston Celtics. And if you ask those that are here at the radio station, Jake, Walter Clayton Jr. fits that bill for them perfectly if the Orlando Magic are going to use their pick in the first round to acquire such a talent. Would you like a guy such as Walter Clayton, after seeing what he was able to accomplish in the NCAA tournament this past season? Would that be a fit for the Orlando Magic going in the next season?
Well, it's definitely hard to say no at this point, right? Like, it feels like the whole state of Florida is behind that connection.
Right.
And we've been talking about it for about 3 months. I do think that you have to be careful at pick 25 with the way the roster is constructed right now, with the move that you just made. And let's be honest, Desmond Bane is a proven version of what people would hope, offensively anyways, of what people would hope Walter Clayton would bring. Just don't have too much expectations for anybody who's drafted at 25.
Right.
I think ideally, you've got space on your roster, and you've got minutes that you still want to see what you got from Jett Howard, from Caleb Houston, from Tristan Da Silva. There are still guys who I think you need to get a better look at, and guys who have had moments. I mean, Caleb was one of the best shooters in the league second half of the season.
Right.
Tristan started out really well, kind of hit that rookie wall. So we'll see what those look like. I'm hesitant. Look, the Clayton thing sounds great, and I think it could work, and I think he could be a really good NBA player. But I also think we might be in a situation right now, best player available at 25. Find somebody, and there might be a project, somebody who 3-4 years from now may be something a little bit, a little bit higher ceiling type of guy. It just seems like I've done this long enough as somebody who grew up in Cleveland. And every year, Browns fans are clamoring for Ohio State players. I went to Ohio State. I'm just sort of anticipating that if it doesn't work out that way, let's not all be too disappointed. Just because he might get snatched up and it might not be a great fit. you never know. And that is with no insight. That's with no anything.
Right.
I just don't want people to be disappointed.
Now, when you talked about Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner and the expectation that they're going to continue to grow and develop, and we had you on the program when we were on Sundays, and you just talked about how, listen, I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, what he's doing is MVP level, but, I mean, in half the games, because he missed so many games, Paolo Banchero was doing the same thing, and Franz Wagner has been a great secondary piece to the star and the franchise player that is Paolo Banchero. So when it comes to the development and what you want to see from them next year, how do you want to see these two continue to improve as they are the cornerstones of this ball club?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think with Franz answers, pretty clearly. Let's try to get a little more consistent from the perimeter. It comes and goes. People claim there's a hitch when he's not shooting the ball well. I don't necessarily see that. But I do think that he, if you ask him, the first thing he'd say is he can be a better and more consistent three-point shooter. With Paolo, I think it's distributing. I think it's figuring out, and you've seen him grow in leaps and bounds already in his young career in this regard. Where's the double coming from? How can he manipulate defenses? How can he bend them to his will? And then when he does get that, that blitz or that commitment from a second defender, how quickly can he find the open man and create for his teammates? I think this is, all sort of contingent on his teammates making shots.
Yeah.
Right? You fully understand why he'd be a little hesitant last season to pass to the open man.
Right.
It's probably going off the side of the backboard.
Right.
I think bringing in guys like Desmond Bane, hopefully an offseason of improved work from some of the young players and some more consistency knocking down the jumpers from the perimeter will help in that regard. But I think Paolo is just scratching the surface as far as what kind of a complete offensive playmaking offensive player he can be. We know he can score, but can he create for his teammates a little bit better? That'll make a big difference if he can.
Talking Orlando Magic with the radio play-by-play voice of the Orlando Magic, Jake Chapman, joining us here on Open Gym. Coach Jamal Mosley went on SiriusXM NBA radio, says he told his team that, hey, man, Indiana, what they've done in terms of getting to the NBA Finals could very well be us next year. And you know what, Jake, I really think that the East is going to be wide open, especially after what we've seen the Pacers do this year. If Orlando has a clean bill of health, and I understand that's hard to do in an 82-game season, but if they're able to avoid the injury bug in which they had last year, and you see what Paolo was able to do in half the time, if he can do that for a full season, could the Magic be in the mix the next year to make a run to the Eastern Conference Finals, or dare I say the NBA Finals?
Well, RJ, I don't think you make a move like this if you're thinking any lower than that, right? I mean, you've basically mortgage your future drafts for about 5 seasons because you're expecting to be one of the premier teams in the Eastern Conference. And
right.
Certainly next year, why not? The Knicks just fired their coach for crying out loud.
Right.
Jason Tatum, unfortunately, is going to be recovering from an Achilles injury. Boston's got a whole bunch of second apron stuff they're going to have to worry about. They might look very different in 2 months. And who knows, if I'm the Cavaliers, I'm sitting back, I'm watching all this happening, and I'm saying, cooler heads are going to prevail. We're just going to trot this back out next year and see if it's any better. I'm not making any knee-jerk moves, even though everybody in Cleveland seems to think you can't win with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
They overachieved this year in the regular season. I would run it back next year because I think Cleveland should probably be the odds-on favorite. But we know when we're right, we can hang with the Cleveland Cavaliers, absolutely. And bringing in a guy like Desmond Bane, really what this is, right? Like, Jalen has some problems staying on the floor. And so you've got some Jalen insurance in a guy like Desmond Bane now. And the other part is, this is basically what you were looking for last year with KCP, but even better, right? Like he's a perimeter shooter. He is reliant. He's essentially the best catch and shoot player, not named Curry, in the NBA.
Right.
He can do all of his stuff without the ball in his hands. So I think Desmond Bane is the perfect addition. And as you mentioned, if you can stay healthy, then for sure, I think top 3 or 4 seed in the Eastern Conference and a deep run in the postseason is certainly within the realm of possibility.